Amy's husband was furious when she gave birth to a black baby boy. He immediately left without looking back. Years later, DNA testing had some very unexpected results. Amy's final push echoed through the delivery room as she brought her fourth child into the world. Tired, she fell back against the pillows, her forehead shining with beads of sweat. The moment the nurse placed her swaddled newborn in her arms, Amy went cold. The baby's dark skin tone was jarringly different from her own fair complexion. She looked up uncertainly at the nurse. "There hasn't been a mistake?" she asked softly. The nurse assured her this was indeed her child. Amy noticed the medical staff exchanging meaningful looks. They all knew her well. This was where she delivered her 3 older children. She and her husband Ralph were both white, as were all their other children. Yet here was their 4th child, unmistakably black. When Ralph came in some minutes later, his beaming smile fell the moment he saw the baby. He took some steps backward and cleared the doorway to check the room number, perhaps thinking he'd taken a wrong turn into some other delivery room. Upon re-entry, he looked hard at her, his face now frozen into an accusatory glare. He stayed at the foot of the bed, keeping his distance. "Ralph, please," Amy pleaded, her voice shaking. "I swear I can explain, though I don't understand it myself." Ralph was bitter. He accused her of having an affair with her black supervisor at the insurance firm. Amy's protests were cut short when a nurse asked Ralph to leave so Amy could rest. Her head ached. The miracle of birth had been eclipsed by this unexplainable occurrence, her husband's heartless response. Even her short sleep was filled with disturbing dreams. Later, while she fed her son, Amy couldn't help but see the similarities in his features to those of his siblings, despite the difference in coloring. She named him Samuel, one of the names they had decided upon many months prior. Ralph never visited during the remainder of her hospital stay. Amy hoped he was considering other explanations for their baby's appearance. She knew with absolute certainty that Ralph was Samuel's father. There had never been anyone else. But Ralph remained distant after she brought Samuel home, treating both mother and child with cold indifference. For the children's sake, Amy maintained a brave face despite her inner turmoil. The final straw came days later when Ralph announced his departure, suitcase in hand. Amy's desperate appeals to their decade-long marriage and their children fell on deaf ears. For Ralph, this was an unforgivable betrayal that threatened his reputation and dignity. In pride wounded beyond the possibility of comprehending anything else, he walked away from his family, leaving Amy with their 4 children. Amy's world shattered after the departure of Ralph, the man she knew all through college. Her friend, then loving husband, had abandoned her without so much as a second thought. Her love story had developed organically into marrying her partner and having the eagerness to start a family. Ralph had mentioned having 2 kids and the house with the white picket fence common American dreams. Amy had wanted a big family. Her desire had stemmed from a lonely childhood as an only child after losing her older sister in that tragic school bus accident when she was 4. Her desire had been fulfilled, though she had respected Ralph's 2-child plan. That first pregnancy had been magical, the hours spent dreaming of a future child culminating in the birth of their little boy. 3 years later, they were blessed with twins, a boy and a girl. For Ralph, this was his ideal family, but fate had other plans. 5 years after the twins, Amy recognized the familiar signs one morning. The pregnancy test confirmed what she had known already, and she was both terrified and secretly delighted. Ralph's reaction initially had been anger. He had screamed at her for being careless, his anger lasting weeks. Yet as the pregnancy progressed, he softened, getting back to his loving husband self she knew until Samuel was born, and their baby's dark skin color had destroyed their family's harmony. Now alone with the daunting task of raising 4 children, her 9-year-old, the 5-year-old twins, and baby Samuel, Amy found her world crumbled between motherhood and survival. Those who had envied her perfect family when she had it now whispered cruel gossip of her being unfaithful and hypocritical. And when she went and asked friends for help, all she received were words of comfort that sounded empty, as friends were all too busy with their own struggles. Every night when the children were in bed, Amy would cry into her pillow, not making a sound. The pain felt visceral, as though she were being torn apart from inside. Responsibilities that had been manageable earlier now seemed an insurmountable load to her. Yet her children needed her more than ever, seeking reassurance from her as their father was no longer beside them. Amy's performance at work began to suffer as she struggled to concentrate. And then, of course, there were the unexpected tears when she'd go down, leaving her colleagues uncomfortable. She was summoned to her supervisor's office after she almost committed a serious mistake on a critical report. Rather than termination, they insisted on an indefinite, unpaid leave. Amy knew she wanted to protest high heaven. She desperately needed the money, but she recognized the wisdom in their decision as she silently accepted it gratefully, because at least she would have a job to come back to. Amy desperately tried to get a hold of Ralph by every means possible: text messages, calls, and dozens of voicemails. None of these was returned, and he was gone, seemingly into thin air. Her attempt to find him through social media revealed that he had blocked her everywhere. This realization brought on mixed feelings of frustration, anger, and deep sadness. Even if Ralph intended to ignore her, how could he abandon their children? 6 months passed, and he didn't send 1 cent for their maintenance. The psychological distress rendered Amy perpetually tired and depressed. She resorted to catching up on unplanned naps to assuage the pain in her heart, house chores remaining unattended in consequence. The house became a mess. She could hardly prepare 1 meal a day for the kids. Jeremy, Amy's 9-year-old son, was surprisingly mature. Though younger, he would tidy up after his mother, collecting all fallen toys into the basket, loading dirty clothes into the washing machine, running the vacuum cleaner, and wiping the kitchen surfaces every morning. He would fix some cereal for himself and his siblings, make sandwiches after school, and even take care of baby Samuel when he was crying while Amy lay asleep. When rocking Samuel in his cradle didn't work, usually indicating hunger or a needed diaper change, Jeremy would carefully carry his baby brother to Amy. She was deeply touched by such thoughtfulness on his part. She hadn't realized how resourceful her eldest had become. Encouraged by Jeremy's example, Amy pushed herself to accept more responsibility, but she still gave Jeremy and the twins lesser chores. She restocked their kitchen and tried to establish a routine, but her thoughts of Ralph often sent her into tears. The house itself reminded her of too many shared times as a family. Instinctively, Jeremy never spoke of his father, but the 6-year-old twins did, asking about their daddy, and that made it even more hurtful. 7 months later, Philip, a good-looking mixed-race man in his early 40s and the principal of the school, invited Amy for a talk. He had noticed her children's deteriorating performance in class and their general withdrawal from peers. On confrontation, Amy simply collapsed. Through her sobs, she just let it all hang out, how she was trying to hold the family together, how her pain was overwhelming her, and how she was scared she'd fall apart. Philip listened with empathetic concern, and then offered to take them all out for a day of fun at an amusement park, which delighted the kids. As the kids played, Philip went on to share his story with Amy. Having lost his wife to complications in childbirth, their daughter, at the time Jeremy's age, survived. He spoke of a supportive community that helped him through the darkest of times and told Amy he could introduce her to this group. The community proved to be a lifeline. Her circle quickly provided Amy with support, including singles and stable families, always at the weekly meetings. They oohed and awed over baby Samuel, and when they heard Amy's story, dove headfirst into offering practical help. Her most pressing concern had been childcare, with her savings dwindling. She needed to return to work but couldn't afford a sitter. In turn, 5 community stay-at-home mothers planned a schedule, each dedicating 1 workday to watch all 4 children so Amy could have the well-needed opportunity to piece her life back together. After attending various community events with Philip and the ongoing support of the community, Amy started to feel like herself after several weeks. Her job performance improved tremendously, remarkable enough to impress her superiors. After a few blown-through sales expectations, she received a double promotion several months later, an achievement she proudly shared with her new community as they rejoiced at her good news. Amy's finances soon stabilized to where she could hire babysitters, But still, community mothers would offer to take her kids, telling her how easy to love they were and what a good mom she was. Their benevolence brought tears of gratitude to her eyes time and again. As the school principal, Philip remained a constant presence in Amy's life. They saw each other at community gatherings and developed a close friendship. And Amy gradually realized they were in daily communication, texting, telephone calls, and outings with their children. Indeed, Philip's daughter had started calling Amy Mommy. Amy tried to avoid analyzing this growing closeness too much and settled upon the comforting reason of having his friendship. A year after Ralph's departure, Amy noticed how well her family had adjusted. The kids did their chores, she cooked and helped with homework, and the kids' schoolwork and extracurricular performances were not suffering in the least. During family meals, she felt pride in the closeness of her children as siblings. They had learned to flourish without Ralph. This realization was followed by another one. Ralph wasn't as crucial to their household as she had remembered. Amy was now earning 3 times what they had earlier together, and she remembered how Ralph had blown most of his money on designer accessories to keep up appearances while she had looked after the family's real needs. It had been almost 2 years, but Ralph hadn't filed for divorce yet, probably because Amy suspected that would mean alimony and child support. While having a picnic in the park one Saturday afternoon, Philip sat and looked at the children playing, among them 3-year-old Samuel. Amy questioned him as to what was wrong. All he could say was that the children have interesting eyes. Amy said they inherited those from her father's side of the family, but Philip countered that Samuel's having the same eyes indicated he truly was Ralph's bio child. That observation gave Amy the final push towards DNA testing, using an old sample of Ralph's. The results surprised her. Samuel was indeed Ralph's son, and his dark skin was genetic. The doctors called to explain that this meant one of his grandparents or great-grandparents had to be black, although Amy knew of no such ancestry on either side of the family. The mystery resolved itself the next day when Ralph unexpectedly called. Just then, he had learnt from his mother that his biological father was a black man, her former fiancé who died in an accident. She had then married his best friend, a white man, and finding no reason to reveal the fact since Ralph was born with light skin, she kept this truth hidden until her conscience forced her to let it out. Ralph begged to return to his family, promising to be a father to all the children, including Samuel. Amy refused. His 3-year abandonment had cost him too much. Although she granted him visiting rights after the divorce, the children preferred keeping company with Philip rather than their father. When the two finally began to date, their children went through the roof, including Philip's own daughter. Their story found its happy ending. However, the ending did leave many to ponder upon Ralph's hurried judgment against and desertion of his family over his own unknown heritage. What a touching story. How do you feel about Ralph's reaction to discovering his baby's skin color? Share your thoughts in the comments below.